everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen and I'm here today with a tier ranking of magical creatures. So jumping right in to the tiers, at the top we have pet. These are magical creatures that I would want to have as a pet. Below that we have would interact. So this is like if my friend had this magical creature for a pet, I wouldn't mind hanging out with it when I'm at my friend's house, but I wouldn't want one myself. Below that, we have cool but would not interact. So like the real world equivalent of this is like a tiger. Like tigers are cool and cute, and I like to look at them at zoos, but obviously would not want to actually interact with one. Below that, we have uninterested. These are creatures that I just don't want to have any contact with. If they were at a friend's house, I would actively avoid them. And then of course on the bottom we have would die. And obviously there's a little bit of intersect between would die and cool but wouldn't interact, because the reason I wouldn't interact with a lot of the cool ones is because they're deadly. So would die is specifically ones that I would die, and I also don't want to see them with my eyeballs even if I'm in a safe place. And then a little like asterisk for this tier ranking, I didn't include any magical creatures that are human-like, because since I have pet as like the top category, it would feel really weird to include creatures that are human-like. So this covers like ones that are literally part human, like centaurs have the upper body of a human, lower body of a horse. Merpeople also fall under that category. But I also kind of tried to include any creatures that have like human level intelligence, like house elves or goblins. And then the other thing is that this list is pretty heavily Harry Potter influenced. This is where I get most of my magical creatures from. So anyway, with all that being said, jumping right in, I thought I would start with just a really obvious one, and that is Acromantula, which are from the Harry Potter universe, and they are giant spiders. And I would die. I would die. I am with Ron Weasley on this. Spiders are the worst. Don't want to see them even if it is from the safety of a cage. But next, getting past that unpleasantness, we have Nifflers, also from the Harry Potter universe. And Nifflers are cute and funny, but they're little terrors. They tear things apart looking for anything that is shiny or sparkly. And so as cute as they are, I would not want them as a pet, but I would interact with one in like a somewhat more controlled setting, like a petting zoo maybe? I don't know. And after that we have my first one where I am uninterested, and that is Blast-Ended Skrewts. Again, Harry Potter universe. These are essentially like scorpions that can shoot flames kind of out of their little scorpion tail thing. They're not deadly. They can give you like, I think, reasonably severe burns, but like they aren't gonna kill you. But these are way too similar to bugs, and also like just who wants to interact with something that's gonna burn you. So I'm uninterested in these creatures, even if they cannot kill me. Next, after that, we have hippogriffs, and I'm putting these ones in probably a somewhat controversial category. I think hippogriffs are pretty popular. Obviously they play a pretty good sized role in the Harry Potter universe. Buckbeak is a pretty popular character, but despite the fact that I recognize that they are very cool, I do not want to interact with them. I would feel too nervous that they would not accept my, polite overtures. Hippogriffs get offended very easily. You have to bow to them before they will let you touch them, and if they don't like you, they might like attack you. And hippogriffs are big and have big talons, so they could kill you theoretically, but they're definitely not as deadly as like giant spiders. But that being said, I do still think that they're cool. Obviously we are meant to have a lot of sympathy for them in the Harry Potter series, and so that has been ingrained in me. So cool, but I would be too scared to interact. And then in a very similar way, we have griffins. Hippogriffs are like eagles on the front and horse on the back, and then griffins are eagle on the front, lion on the back. So very similar creatures, and therefore still very cool, but don't want to interact. And then after that we have my first entry in the pet category. I have very few that for me rose to the level of wanting to have one in my house with me 24/7, but one that did make the cut was Pygmy Puffs. These are essentially brightly colored hamsters. I did have hamsters as a child. It's not something I super highly recommend, but I imagine Pygmy Puffs to be a little bit less nervous than hamsters. A lot of hamsters are very scared. Some, because of the fact that they're very scared, can be very bitey. Yeah, I imagine Pygmy Puffs to be like hamsters, but better. And I like that they come in really bright, fun colors. So this is something that I would be willing to have as a pet. Next, we have our next very obvious would die creature, and that is a basilisk. This is a giant snake that can kill you just by looking at you. And right along with that, we have the Kraken. Giant sea monster, very dangerous. Would not recommend interacting. And then of course, moving right along with this deadly creatures parade, because they're all just really obvious and don't need a lot of explanation, we have a troll. But moving on from the deadly creatures, we have an extremely popular creature that is well known in many fantasy stories, and that is the beloved unicorn. And I would interact, although honestly not with a ton of excitement. My family owned horses for a while, and I didn't really enjoy it. It definitely put me off of the whole liking horses thing. I feel like a lot of, especially little girls, really like the idea of horses, but the reality is not as fun as it looks. But still, obviously unicorns are not just horses. So I would still interact. I wouldn't want one as a pet, partly because I've been put off of horses, and partly because that would feel kind of weird, because even though unicorns aren't typically shown have like speech ability and therefore don't necessarily have human-like qualities, they still come off as very intelligent and very revered in any story that they appear in, and so it would feel weird to have one as a pet anyways. And then right alongside unicorns, we have Pegasus. Very similar idea. Horses with wings. Again, pretty revered. Pegasus are usually associated with heaven in fantasy stories and mythologies. Heaven or gods. Unicorns are much more earth-bound, I would say. They don't have wings. So again, would be weird to have one as a pet, although you can see it a little more if you watch Disney's Hercules. But still, again, I'm not a horse girly, so would interact, would never want one as a pet. After that, I have bowtruckles, and these are from the Harry Potter universe. They are little stick-like creatures that kind of blend in with trees, and I don't think anyone would have thought much of these except that one appears in the Fantastic Beasts franchise, and its interaction with the main character is very cute. So if you've seen those movies, you probably like bowtruckles. And while I like the one that is in Fantastic Beasts, at the same time, I think if I met one in real life, it would be too bug-like for me. Because, I mean, we do have bugs that look essentially like sticks in the real world, and it's a bug. I'm not interested in interacting with bugs. So this one belongs firmly in the uninterested category. I have a deep fear of bugs, if it was not obvious. And then right alongside that, we have mandrakes. Not because they're bug-like, they are plant-like, which arguably the bowtruckle in Fantastic Beasts is a lot more plant-looking than bug-looking, but before that movie, I always imagined it to be much more buggy. But anyways, mandrakes I'm also uninterested in. Obviously, a full-grown mandrake can kill you with its screams if you don't have the proper ear coverage, but that's like a very specific circumstance under which it can kill you. So I didn't think it was quite to the level of would die category, but definitely it's in the level of I do not want to interact with it category. After that, we have demiguises, which were a little bit hard to place. Again, this is from the Harry Potter series. They're kind of monkey-like creatures that can turn invisible. And again, this one is featured in the Fantastic Beasts movie franchise specifically. And the one that we meet in that movie seems very sweet, seems to have like very maternal vibes almost. But I just don't know much about demiguises since they aren't really featured in the books much. And it's kind of a less focused on creature in the Fantastic Beasts movie. So I put it conservatively in the would interact category. But I think if I knew more about them, they could maybe be in the pet category, because again, They seem very sweet. Then after that we have golden snidgets. These are little golden birds that originally were used in Quidditch before snitches were invented. And I like a little bird fine enough. I don't particularly want one, so I put this in the would interact category. After that, we have boggarts. And I am very much a scaredy cat. My greatest fear, again, is bugs. My boggart, much like Ron's, would probably turn into a giant spider. And I'm sorry, but slapping a pair of roller skates on it is not gonna make me laugh. I'm still gonna be scared. I don't think there's anything that I could turn a giant spider into to make it funny. So this is the would die category for me. I would not be good at the spell ridiculous. And yes, I used Snape in Neville's grandmother's clothes to represent the boggart. After that, we have an Occamy, which is kind of like a bird-ish snake creature. And I'm pretty sure this is the one that shrinks and grows to fit whatever space it's in. And I think I put this one in kind of a controversial category since it is a snake-like creature and a lot of people don't like snakes or are afraid of snakes. I kind of like snakes. I never have personally had one myself as a pet, but I've known people who have, and I like interacting with them. So the Occamy for me, I wouldn't want one myself, but would interact. Next after that we have Minotaur, and this goes straight to the would die category. And after that we have my second and final pet category creature, and that is phoenixes. Phoenixes are my favorite magical creature, and I would love to have one. And then finally, after that, we have the one that probably everyone has been waiting for, the, I would argue, most famous, most popular magical creature that has been come up with, and that is dragons. But dragons are really hard to place. First of all, because they are so popular that they are represented in a lot of fantasy and are therefore represented in many different ways. So it partly depends on which dragons you're talking about. If you're talking about dragons from the Harry Potter universe, would die. If you're talking about dragons from like the inheritance cycle, probably just would interact. I don't think I would want to be a dragon rider, but yeah, would interact. But I think we can all agree that dragons are really cool. There's a reason they're so popular. And so in the end, I put dragons in the cool but would not interact category, as they do typically present a pretty high level of danger. So that was it for my tier ranking of magical creatures. Let me know down below any magical creatures that weren't on this list, but that you have a strong opinion on where they would belong if they were on the list. And also let me know which creatures that are on the list that you agree with me on or disagree with me on. Let me know who out there is crazy enough to want a giant spider for a pet, or that thinks a pygmy puff is deadly. Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.